Thomas Reeves was mopping the fourth-floor corridor of the Pentagon's E-ring when he noticed the electrical panel hanging open. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, his mop bucket leaving wet streaks across marble floors that had been walked by presidents and generals. And something about that open panel made his stomach tighten. Tommy was 58 years old, wearing a gray janitor's uniform with his name stitched above the pocket, invisible to the handful of people still working late in the world's most powerful military headquarters. Most people saw the mop and the gray hair and assumed he was just another aging custodian counting down to retirement. They didn't know that Thomas Reeves had spent 28 years as one of the U.S. Army's most decorated explosive ordnance disposal technicians. They didn't know he disarmed 847 IEDs in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. They didn't know that the hands pushing that mop had cut wires on devices that would have killed thousands. And they definitely didn't know that in exactly 13 minutes, those same hands were going to be the only thing standing between a terrorist's master plan and the complete destruction of America's military command structure. Because when Tommy looked inside that electrical panel and saw the SEMTEX explosive with a digital timer counting down from 2743, he didn't panic. He just thought, here we go again. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this story of redemption, deadly precision under pressure, and the moment when a dismissed janitor proved that some skills never fade, they just wait for the crisis that needs them most. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. And if you believe that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button. These are the stories that prove your title doesn't define your capability. Your actions do. Tommy had been Army EOD from 1991 to 2019. 28 years of walking toward bombs while everyone else ran away. He'd started in the first Gulf War, clearing mines from Kuwaiti oil fields while Saddam's forces retreated. Back then, EOD work was almost mechanical. Find the mine, identify the type, follow the manual, render it safe. But after 9/11, everything changed. The insurgents in Iraq and Afghanistan weren't following any manual. They were innovators, constantly adapting, building IEDs from artillery shells and cell phones and pressure cookers. They'd wire devices in series so defusing one would detonate 3 others. They'd hide secondary devices to kill the EOD techs who came for the first one. It became a chess match played with explosives, and losing meant death. Tommy had been good at the game, better than good. He developed an almost intuitive sense for how bomb makers thought, could look at a device and understand the logic behind its construction. He'd pioneered techniques for defeating anti-tamper mechanism. He'd trained other EOD techs, written sections of the field manual, been requested by name for the most complex situations. His specialty was render safe procedures, the delicate work of taking apart sophisticated devices that most techs wouldn't touch. But the job took pieces of him every time. Every wire he cut, every device that didn't detonate, every life he saved, because he couldn't save them all. And the ones he lost stayed with him, especially Mike Chen. Staff Sergeant Mike Chen had been his partner for 3 years in Iraq. Young, brilliant, funny. Mike had a wife and a baby daughter back home. He'd shown Tommy pictures every day. The baby learning to smile, learning to crawl, learning to wave. Mike was supposed to rotate home in 2 weeks when it happened Fallujah, November 2007. They'd been called to a marketplace where insurgents had planted an EFP, an explosively formed penetrator, designed to punch through armor. The device was sophisticated, well hidden, with what looked like a simple pressure plate trigger. Tommy had approached it carefully, his robot probe identifying the components. It looked straightforward, textbook even, but Mike had seen something in the wiring that bothered him. Tommy, wait, something's off. Look at that secondary wire. Tommy had looked, seen it. A wire that didn't seem to connect to anything. Probably just a decoy, he'd thought. Insurgents did that sometimes. Added dummy components to make techs hesitate. It's nothing, Tommy had said. Stay back. I'm going to cut the main power. Mike had trusted him, stayed 30 meters back, behind cover. While Tommy approached, Tommy had been reaching for the wire cutters when Mike's voice came over the radio. Tommy, that secondary wire. I think it's a... The explosion had cut him off, not the main device. A secondary charge Mike had spotted, connected to a trembler switch that activated when Tommy got within 10 meters. The blast had thrown Tommy backward, saved his life. But Mike, 30 meters away, had been hit by shrapnel from a daisy chain of devices that detonated in sequence. Tommy had crawled to him, applied pressure to wounds that were too many and too severe. Mike had died in his arms, whispering, "Tell Sarah I love her. Tell Emma her daddy loves her." Tommy had told them at the funeral, looking at a 2-year-old who'd never remember her father and a widow who'd never forgive the Army for taking him. After that, Tommy's disarmament count had continued to climb. He'd thrown himself into the work with almost suicidal dedication, but the nightmares had started. Every Every device, every wire, every decision, he'd see Mike's face, hear that last radio call, wonder if he'd been too confident, too quick to dismiss what his partner had seen. The PTSD had gotten worse over time. Nightmare, hypervigilance, the inability to be in crowds. His wife Linda had been patient, supportive, loving through the worst of it. Then, in 2019, Tommy's hands started shaking during training. Not much, just a tremor. But when cutting wires on live explosives, any shake is too much. His CO had been kind. "You've done your time, Tommy. Retire with honor." So he had. 6 months later, Linda was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Gone in 8 months. When she died, Tommy felt completely untethered. No job, no wife, no purpose. The janitor job at the Pentagon was random. A VA friend mentioned they were hiring. Tommy took it, needing something to do, needing to be around the military world, even on the edges. Night shift, quiet, mopping floors. It wasn't much, but it was something. Now he was staring at a bomb that would kill everyone in this section of the building if it detonated. The device was sophisticated. Commercial-grade SEMTEX, digital timer with redundant circuitry, cell phone backup trigger taped to the side, anti-tamper pressure sensors. Professional work. Someone with training had built this. Someone with access had planted it. And the timer showed 26 minutes, 18 seconds. Tommy pulled out his phone, dialed Pentagon security. "This is Thomas Reeves, custodial staff, E-ring 4th floor. I have a situation. There's an explosive device in electrical panel E4-127. I need bomb squad and immediate evacuation of this section." The response was instant chaos. Alarms started blaring. Security personnel came running. Within 3 minutes, Tommy was surrounded by armed guards, a security chief, and a 2-star general who'd been working late. The general looked at the device, looked at Tommy, looked at his watch. "Bomb squad is at Fort Belvoir. 20 minutes if we're lucky. 45 minutes in this traffic." Tommy looked at the timer. 23 minutes, 14 seconds. "Sir, we don't have 45 minutes. We don't have 20. This device will detonate in 23 minutes. Then we evacuate." "Sir, with respect, the Pentagon has 23,000 employees, even at night with skeleton crew. There are hundreds of people in this building. You can't evacuate everyone in 23 minutes. The security chief stepped forward. "Who are you?" "Thomas Reeves, night shift custodian." "And you know about explosives?" "Because," Tommy met his eyes, "because I spent 28 years in Army EOD. I'm retired, but I know bomb, and I know this one will kill a lot of people if someone doesn't do something right now." The general pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke quietly, hung up, looked at Tommy. "I just verified your service record with personnel. Master EOD technician. 847 confirmed IED disarmaments, multiple medals, exemplary record until medical retirement in 2019. He paused. "Can you disarm this?" Tommy's hands were shaking. Not much, just that familiar tremor that had ended his career. He looked at those hands, thought about Mike Chen in Fallujah, thought about Linda telling him, "You're the best there ever was," thought about all the reasons he'd failed. Then he looked at the bomb and thought about all the people in this building who had no idea they were about to die. "Yes, sir, I can disarm it." "Then do it. We'll evacuate what we can, but you're authorized to proceed." The general and security moved out, taking people with them. Tommy was left alone in the corridor with a bomb and a ticking clock. 21 minutes, 47 seconds. He knelt beside the device, pulled out his small toolkit. He'd kept it from his Army days, carried it out of habit, and started the examination. The device was more sophisticated than he'd initially thought. 12 wires instead of the usual 4 or 5. The circuit board was custom, probably 3D printed, multiple redundancies. This wasn't some amateur with internet instruction. His was a professional who knew exactly what they were doing. Tommy traced the wiring with his eyes, following the logic of the circuit. Power source to timer, timer to detonator. But there were extra wires, probably anti-tamper mechanisms. Cut the wrong one and the device would detonate immediately. 19 minutes. Tommy's phone buzzed. The security chief. "Reeves, you need to see this. We found another device. C-ring, HVAC system, same signature, and there's a note." Tommy's blood went cold. "What does it say?" 12 devices total, networked and sequential. Disarm out of order and they all detonate. Good luck. It's signed, the architect. 12 devices, networked, sequential. Tommy closed his eyes and forced his breathing to slow. This wasn't just a bomb. This was a coordinated attack on the Pentagon itself. Someone had planted a dozen sophisticated explosives throughout the building, and they were all connected, which meant Tommy couldn't just disarm the one in front of him. He had to find the pattern, understand the sequence, and disarm all 12 in the correct order. "Send me photos of every device you find," Tommy said. "I need to see the construction, and clear the building. Everyone out, now!" He went back to examining the first device. If this was sequential, then this one was probably number 1, the first in the chain, which meant it would be the template. Tommy pulled out his phone and started photographing every angle, every wire, every component. His mind was already working through the logic. 12 devices, probably placed at critical infrastructure points. HV, AC, electrical, communications, structural supports. Whoever planned this wanted to bring down the Pentagon's operational capability. Tommy's phone lit up with photos from security teams finding devices throughout the building. Number 2 in the HVAC system, number 3 in a server room, number 4 in the parking garage, number 5 in the cafeteria. Each one was sophisticated, professional, and had the same networked signature. Someone was watching this unfold. Someone was waiting to see if Tommy could figure it out. 17 minutes. Tommy made a decision. He had to trust his training and his instincts. He examined device number 1's wiring one more time, identified the detonator lead, a yellow wire buried among 11 others, and prepared to cut it. His hand was shaking, the tremor that had ended his career. He took a breath, thought about Mike, thought about Linda, thought about every bomb he'd ever disarmed. The shake steadied. He cut the yellow wire. The timer on device 1 stopped. 16:43 frozen on the display. Tommy exhaled. 1 down, 11 to go. He stood, grabbed his toolkit, and started running. The building was evacuating, but it was chaos. People didn't know where to go. What was happening? Tommy pushed through them, heading for the HVAC room where device 2 waited. He had 16 minutes to disarm 11 more bombs, and each one would be different, more complex. Testing everything he knew, device 2 was in the basement HVAC system. This one had a pressure sensor. Any change in air pressure from the ventilation system would trigger detonation. Tommy had to isolate the power while maintaining pressure equilibrium. 14 minutes left. His hands worked fast, disconnecting the pressure sensor first, then cutting the main detonator lead. The timer stopped. 13:27. Device 3 in the server room had a liquid mercury switch. Any vibration would close the circuit and detonate. Tommy had to approach it like diffusing a motion-sensitive mine. Slow, steady, breathing controlled. He disconnected the tilt sensor, then the detonator. Timer stopped. 11:52. Device 4 in the parking garage had a motion detector. Tommy disabled it using the same technique he'd used on Taliban devices in Kandahar, blocking the sensor with a reflective surface, then cutting power. Timer stopped. 10:14. He was moving faster now, his old training taking over completely. The PTSD, the shaking, the doubt, all of it burned away by the need to act. This was what he'd been built for. This was why he'd survived when Mike hadn't. This was his purpose. Devices 5 through 10 were variations on the same theme: cell phone triggers, pressure plates, infrared sensors, light sensors. Each one was a puzzle, and Tommy solved them one after another, his mind working through circuits and connections with the muscle memory of 28 years, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes. He reached device 11 in the executive corridor with 4 minutes, 22 seconds on the clock. This one was different, more complex, neural network detonator. It was learning from his previous disarmaments, adapting. Tommy had never seen anything like it outside of classified briefings. Whoever built this was beyond professional. They were a genius, and they were testing him. Tommy photographed the device, sent it to the bomb squad that had finally arrived. The tech on the phone said, "Sir, that's adaptive circuitry. It's going to change its firing pattern based on your approach. I've never seen one disarm successfully. First time for everything," Tommy said, and got to work 3 minutes. He traced the neural network, found the learning algorithm's power source, isolated it. 2 minutes, cut the backup power. 90 seconds, disabled the adaptive circuit. 60 seconds, found the detonator lead hidden behind a false wire. 45 seconds, cut it. Timer stopped. 0:38. One device left, device 12, and Tommy knew exactly where it would be. The most important room in the Pentagon, the place where decisions that affected the entire world were made. He ran for the Situation Room. The door was locked. Security had evacuated everyone, including the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs, who'd been in a late meeting. Tommy's badge didn't have clearance. He pounded on the reinforced door. "I need access. There's a device inside." The security chief appeared, swiped his card, opened the door. "You have 2 minutes, Reeves. If you can't do it, you run. Understood?" Understood. But Tommy knew he wouldn't run. Not this time. Not after 11 successful disarmaments. Not when he was this close to finishing what he'd started. Tommy entered the Situation Room, the legendary space where presidents had made decisions about wars, where generals had planned operations, where the fate of nations had been decided. A place he'd only ever seen in photographs. And there, beneath the main conference table where the most powerful people in the military sat, was Device 12. 12, the architect's final masterpiece. The sophistication was immediately apparent. Digital timer showing 1:47. But unlike the previous devices, this one had a transparent case that let Tommy see every component, 24 wires in different colors: red, blue, green, yellow, orange, purple, black, white, and combinations thereof. Multiple circuit boards stacked in layers. A neural network processor that was actively monitoring for tampering. Anti-tamper pressure plates beneath the device. Infrared sensors pointed at all approach angles. This wasn't just a bomb. It was a death trap designed specifically to kill anyone who tried to disarm it. Tommy's phone rang. Unknown number. His instinct was to ignore it, but something made him answer. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to understand who had created this nightmare. "Hello, Thomas." A calm male voice. Professional. Educated. Mid-40s, if Tommy had to guess. "Or should I call you Tommy? That's what Linda called you, wasn't it? Your wife. Pancreatic cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to death. You held her hand at the end. Told her you loved her. That must have been hard for a man who'd spent his whole life defusing bombs, but couldn't defuse the one growing inside her." Tommy's grip tightened on the phone, his jaw clenching. This person had researched him. Knew details about his life, about Linda. "Who is this?" "They call me the architect. I planned this entire operation. 12 devices, 12 tests, and you've passed 11 of them. Quite impressive for a janitor with PTSD and shaking hands. Your service record says you disarmed 847 IEDs in combat. Tonight, you've added 11 more to that total, but you won't make it to 859 because device 12 is beyond even your considerable skills. What do you want? I want you to fail. I want the Pentagon destroyed. I want the military-industrial complex that killed my brother in a drone strike to burn to the ground. Christopher Cross, age 23. Wedding planned for June 2018. Killed in Syria by an American Reaper drone. Collateral damage, they called it. Acceptable losses." The voice was cold now. All pretense of calm professionalism stripped away. "I want the people who make those decisions to know what it feels like to be collateral damage. And I want the man who thinks he's some kind of hero to die knowing he couldn't save them." Tommy looked at the timer 1:14. He looked at the 24 wires, the layered circuit board, the neural network that was probably analyzing his body temperature and heart rate right now. The architect was right. This was beyond anything Tommy had encountered. This required specialized equipment he didn't have, time he didn't have, mental clarity he wasn't sure he possessed. But then he thought about something Linda had said in the hospital 3 days before she died. Her voice had been weak, her hand cold in his, but her words had been clear. "Tommy, you've saved thousands of people. Don't forget that when the dark times come. You're the best EOD tech the Army ever had. Not because you're fearless, because you're not. You're terrified every single time, but you do it anyway. That's what makes you the best. The fear means you're careful. The action means you're brave. You're both. That's why people are alive today." Tommy's hands stopped shaking, completely still, like they'd been 20 years ago, before the PTSD, before the tremors, before everything fell apart. "You're wrong about one thing," he said into the phone, his voice steady and calm. "I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just doing my job. Same job I did in Fallujah when I disarmed an EFP that would have killed 30 Marines. Same job I did in Kandahar when I cleared a school that had been rigged to collapse. Same job I did in Damascus when I defused a VBIE'd at a hospital. I'm good at this job, really good. And you're about to learn that 30 years of experience beats clever engineering every single time." He hung up. 52 seconds. Tommy set his phone down and examined the device with fresh eyes, pushing away everything except the technical challenge in front of him: 24 wires, 4 circuit board, neural network processor, anti-tamper mechanisms, but only one wire that actually mattered. Only one that connected the power source to the detonator cap buried in the SEMTEX. The architect had hidden the real detonator lid among 23 decoys. Each decoy had an anti-tamper trigger. Cut the wrong one and the device detonated 40 seconds. Tommy traced each wire with his eyes, following the logic. The architect was brilliant, but he had patterns. The previous 11 devices had taught Tommy how this person thought: conservative, redundant, everything backed up, which meant the real detonator would be the most protected wire, the one with the most redundancy. 30 seconds, found it. A green wire, third from the left, with 4 separate backup circuits. That was the one. Had to be. 20 seconds. Tommy positioned his wire cutters. His hand was steady, completely steady, like it hadn't been in 4 years. 15 seconds. He thought about Mike, about Linda, about every person he'd saved, and every person he'd failed to save. 10 seconds. He cut the green wire. The timer stopped. 07. Tommy sat back, his heart pounding, his whole body shaking now that it was over. The Situation Room door burst open. The Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs, the Security Chief, FBI agents, everyone talking at once. The Secretary of Defense approached, extended his hand. "Mr. Reeves, you just saved the Pentagon. Saved everyone in this building, saved the continuity of of American military command. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you. Tommy shook his hand. Just doing what I was trained for, sir. The FBI caught the architect 3 hours later. Malcolm Cross, former Pentagon security contractor, bomb maker, computer expert. He'd planted the devices over 6 months, used insider access, planned everything perfectly, except he hadn't planned on a janitor with 847 IED disarmaments and the refusal to give up. The story hit the news the next day. Pentagon janitor stops terrorist attack. Photos of Tommy in his gray uniform. His military record released. Interviews with generals who called him a hero. Media requesting appearances. The president calling personally to thank him. Tommy declined all of it. Went back to work the following Monday. Night shift. Mopping floors in the E-ring like nothing had happened. A young Pentagon staffer stopped him in the hallway. "Mr. Reeves, I saw the news. You're famous. A hero. Why are you still mopping floors?" Tommy leaned on his mop, looked at the kid. "Son, heroes are the ones who didn't make it home. Staff Sergeant Mike Chen in Fallujah. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez in Kandahar. Captain James Rhodes in Syria. They're the heroes. I'm just a janitor who used to know how to cut wires, and this building needs to be clean. Someone's got to do it." But that night, when Tommy was alone in the corridor, he pulled out his phone and looked at a photo of Linda, smiled, whispered, "I did it, baby. One more time. I was the best." His hand didn't shake anymore. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age or your job title? Ever watched someone prove that experience and skill matter more than appearances? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe that heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear janitor uniforms and carry mop buckets. And when the moment comes that tests everything you've ever learned, it's not your title that matters. It's whether you have the courage to step forward when everyone else steps back. Thomas Reeves stepped forward, and the Pentagon and everyone in it went home safe that night because a 58-year-old janitor remembered that some skills never fade. They just wait for the crisis that needs them most.